let me just give a small introduction. Who was, first of all, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? What is Lag BaOmer? Lag, first of all, stands for Lamed Gimel, is the 33rd. Lamed and Gimel is the numerical value of 33, which is the 33rd day of the Omer. And we celebrate for one particular reason. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was a great sage around, I would say, 70 BCE, before Common Era. He lived at the times of the Romans. He was a great sage, and it's surprising enough that he was a sage that everybody celebrates. If you look, for example, today in Israel, I was watching the video in Israel. Usually when you go up to Tzfat, in the mountain of Maimon, there's about 200,000 people every year. This year, unfortunately, and under the COVID-19, there are not that many people this year. But it's when you look at the different people that come up to Tzfat in Eretz Israel, you see Ashkenazim, Sephardim, Hasidim, everybody's there. He was like a very celebrated sage that was accepted in all of the communities. And now, why does it become a really day of celebration, which is really maybe the connection we could find also with Teddy Madar, Zichrono Livracha, Baruch, that the connection of the day of a passing. So Rabbi Shimon, before he passed away, he asked his students and he asked his family members to make a day of celebration on the day of his passing. And this is where the word Hilula, for those who know this word, who heard this word in the past, Hilula is usually a day we commemorate of a passing of a great sage or a great person, a great tzaddik. But the word Hilula, what does the word Hilula represent? Hilula means a wedding, a celebration, a wedding celebration. So Rabbi Shimon is telling his students and his family members that on the day of his passing, that they should make a big party, they should make a great celebration. Why? Because that is the day where he becomes united back with his Creator. That is the day that he felt there's a day to celebrate when he passes away and he joins back and reunites with his Creator. His soul reunites with him. And for him, it was a great day of celebration when finally his part of his soul becomes married, so to speak, with God, with its Creator. So Rabbi Shimon was a great personality of great stature, whether it's in scholarly or even in terms of his level of sanctity and holiness. He's the one that's well known to have written the Zohar, which is probably the basic and most fundamental book of Kabbalah and Jewish tradition. He was a great saint. But I would like to share a story with you. There's many things to say about him, but I'll try not to be too long. I'll share with you one small anecdote that some of you have heard. My daughter, this past Motzei Shabbat, my daughter repeated a very beautiful story. But what I find very interesting about the story is not so much of, it's very hard for us to relate for people that are very holy or very saint. When we speak about somebody, we think about somebody like Moshe Rabbeinu, who's such a great person, is so holy, it's very hard for us to actually relate. And when we speak about it, we think about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, maybe we get the same feeling. Like this, this is a great rabbi, a great sage, lived a very saint life, a very holy life. How do I relate to him? But I think that the greatness of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is his simplicity, the way he was able to relate to simple things. And I think that the story that my daughter said Motzei Shabbat is probably the best example of how Rabbi Shimon, as great as he was able to relate to simple things. Because, we could find very holy people, very great people, but when they relate, it's very hard for them to relate to simple folk, to simple things. So I'll repeat the story and I'll add an angle that my daughter herself did not speak about. So the anecdote is a very simple one. There's a couple that were married for 10 years. After 10 years of not bearing any fruits, not having any children, they decided to go see Rabbi Shimon. And they wanted to get his advice on what to do, what they should do. You know, they don't have any children. They both wanted to have children, whether they should divorce or not. And they made up their mind that they both want to part ways, and they both are very, very, very anxious to have children. So they decided to go and tell Rabbi Shimon that they wanted to settle the thing and get divorced so they could both part their way and get remarried and have children. When they arrived to the office of Rabbi Shimon contemplated for a moment, and he told them, look, preparing a get and preparing all the documents is not a problem, but I want you to do one thing before you separate, before you divorce. I want you to make a party. Just like when you got married, you made a party and you were joined together, you know, as being a married couple, you made a big feast. I want you to depart from each other and divorce from each other while making a feast and making a big party. So they found that a little bit awkward, you know, making a party when you want to divorce. I mean, we heard about weddings, but divorce parties we never heard about. So the rabbi said, they said, okay, that was his condition. They could come back and pick up all the documents later. So sure enough, they went back home and they prepared a big feast, and they're sitting at the table. And at one point through the meal, the husband looks at his wife and he tells her, my dear wife, we've been married for 10 years. I want you, right before you leave, to take the best item, whatever you want. First of all, you could have everything. But if you want something that really cherish our memory, or at least our 10 years we're together, please, when you leave or when I leave, take whatever item you want from the house. So she tells him, okay, fine. As the meal progresses, the man got to drink a little bit of wine, and sure enough, he drank a little bit too much of wine and he fell asleep. While he fell asleep, his wife was preparing everything and she left. The next morning when he gets up, he finds himself in the house of his mother-in-law. So he looks around. What's going on? What happened to me? What am I doing here in the house of my mother-in-law? So he looks around, he gets up from bed and he tells his wife, what's going on? What am I here? Why am I in this house? So she told him, my dear husband, you told me last night while we were eating together that I could take my favorite object from the house. So I got my assistant to take my favorite object, and you are my favorite object. You are my favorite thing inside of this house. So I decided to bring you to my mother's house. So obviously this kind of love that it kind of ignited something, new feelings within him and within her. They decided to go back to the rabbi and tell them that they've decided not to get divorced. And they walk back to the rabbi's office and they tell him, Rabbi, we had a nice meal, we thought about it, and we've decided to stay together. And another moment, at that time, again, the rabbi contemplates for a few seconds and he gets up on his feet and he gives them a big blessing to have children. And sure enough, with his blessing as being of a great saint, a year or 2 years later, they had a child. That was a beautiful story. Simple, right? Beautiful anecdote. But the question was, and this is something that my daughter didn't bring about, obviously, because you have to be a little bit more mature and understand the dynamic of being married and what it takes. So the question is, what changed? Why is it that when they come to this great rabbi, they came to this great tzaddik, this great saint, he didn't give them a blessing. Only after they went back home and they made the party and everything, the second time they come around, that's when he gives them the blessing. Why didn't he give them the blessing in the first time? Why the whole torture going back and forth and everything? He should have blessed them the first time they came. So the answer is as follows. There's an idea that's brought down in Pirkei Avot, which is called love that is conditional or unconditional love. Ahava shetluya badavar or ahava she'ena tluya badavar. When the first time when Rabbi Shimon came, when this couple came to see Rabbi Shimon saw in them that the only thing that kept them together, the only thing that actually, the glue that kept them married was the fact that they wanted to have children. There was nothing else. Maybe there was even a lack of love. There was some love that was missing within their couple. So he wasn't able to see within them the potential of having any children, the potential of giving them blessing. As we know that our sages explained to us that a whole idea of giving a blessing, a bracha, is when there is something that exists in potential. And then, when there's already something that exists in potential, the sage or the saint, whoever it is able to bring it down here into a material world. But when the love is not there and there's something that's missing, the basic element is not there, they're not able to give a blessing. So the first time around, when they came to Rabbi Shimon saw that their couple, their marriage, the only thing that kept them together was something that's conditional, what's called conditional love. The condition of us staying together, of them being together, was the fact that they wanted to have children. If they didn't have it, they couldn't stay together. But finally, when they come a second time and they realize that there's something way deeper, much deeper in their relationship of unconditional love that's not conditioned, or that there's that condition to having any children. It's unconditional love. They love each other. They just want to be with each other, whether they have children or not. At that moment, they became a receptacle that were able to receive the blessing of this big sage. And then, only then, Rabbi Shimon realizes that now is the right time to give them the blessing, because they became a receptacle to receive this blessing of having unconditional love. Now, what's so great about this story, I mean, at least the way I see it, what's so great about this story is that we see a great man that was at the same time very practical. There's great sages, there are great people around the world, around us, great saints, that they can have their head in the sky, but not all of them can have their feet on the ground. And I think that was the great thing about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, especially when we see in this story, as great of a sage that he was, as great of a saint he was able to relate to a couple that were struggling in their life, that were able to give them a blessing and to relate to their problem, and finally give them the solution. Chazakim u'buchim, may the zchut of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, yes, the merit of him, we should finally get out of this COVID-19, the situation that we are in, and that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, it says that Kidai hu lismoch alav b'shat adchak. Rabbi Shimon is able to give us a blessing, whether he's here with us or he's not with us. Rabbi Shimon is able to bring a certain redemption to all of us and taking us of this exile.